Hi lovely people, and welcome to the November vlog. I'm so excited about this one because I have created a wildlife pond in our back garden, just a small one, but it's something that I've wanted to do since we moved in years and years ago, and I finally got around to doing it, so I'm so chuffed. I'm so excited to see which wildlife it will bring into the garden. As you can see here, I've got my unhelpful helper, Knuckles, so he'll be around in the video, so watch out for him, and also Rufio makes an appearance as well. I really hope you enjoy this one, and we're going to start with me potting up the aquatic plants that I ordered. I ordered 5 plants from Lincolnshire Pond Plants Limited, and I got the extra small bare root pond pack. So the 5 plants include an oxygenator and flowering plants. In total, it costs $32.99. The oxygenator is Elodea densa. Then there is water lily, and these two both go into the main part of the pond. And when I'm digging the pond, I create a sort of margin shelf, so a sort of shallow shelf, which helps loads of wildlife kind of take a drink without falling into the pond. And also it's an area where a lot of the flowering plants can go. So I'm going to pop the purple iris, the juncus grass, and the forget-me-not in there. The pack comes with 4 aquatic pots and enough aquatic compost to fill them. They are grown in the UK, are fully hardy and mainly native. So here I'm putting the oxygenator and the water lily into a pot filled with water, and then the other 3 margin plants are in a tray that is also filled with water, but they're not completely submerged, which I don't think they'd like to be totally submerged all the time, even though they can take on a lot of water. Ideally, what I would have done 2 weeks before putting the plants in the water in the pot is that I would have left it, poured it and then left it for 2 weeks, so that the nutrients in the tap water, such as fluoride and chlorine, would have evaporated, because the plants won't particularly like being submerged in that while they're still in there. But I didn't think that far ahead. I just got really excited that I was making the time to actually build the pond, and the first thing I did was order the pond plants. So hopefully it won't hurt them too much. We'll keep our fingers crossed. As you can see, I've started digging the hole for the large pot, which is going to form the basis of the pond. The pot was just from a planting job I did quite a while ago, and it's roughly about 20 inches by about 20 inches. So it's going to definitely be a small pond, but even the smallest bit of water can attract life. You'll see that I dig, and then I try and put the pot in the hole just to kind of gauge how much deeper I need to dig. So you'll see the pot going in and out, in and out, in and out. But that was part of the process, and also the soil that I'm taking out and putting in the wheelbarrow, I'm actually putting in my front garden bed just because it needs topping up a little bit. So I'll put the compost in the wheelbarrow, and then I have to break it up, because when it's going in, it's kind of like big clods of earth. So I'm breaking them up, tipping it into the front bed and coming back, and just repeating that cycle. So the whole process from start to finish, including potting up the aquatic plants, took roughly about 4.5 hours, which I was pretty pleased with, because I knew it was going to be quite a lot of digging, even though it's only a smallish pot. But it was just a bit of an awkward space, because at some point the spade wasn't really doing it for me. It wouldn't kind of reach in at the right angle, so I actually had to end up just like taking out loads of earth with my hands. So yeah, pretty pleased with how long it took. And you know, by the end I had a pretty much complete pond. After that time, I did have to add the sort of larger pebbles and the aquatic plants, put them actually in the water, but that really didn't take very long at all. So yeah, we're roughly talking about, I would say in absolute total, probably 5 hours max, I would say, for absolutely everything. So that's like pretty good going, I think. So I want to talk more about why I'm building this pond in the first place, and it's essentially to increase the biodiversity within my garden. I want to attract as much wildlife as possible. And I'm going to read a section from the RHS website article about building a pond, which I'll link below. So the section about wildlife spotting, it says that wildlife will find a new pond surprisingly quickly. Pond skaters and diving beetles can arrive within a few days or weeks, and damselflies and amphibians could easily be on the scene within the first year. Although it might be tempting to move frog spawn, pond sediment, or even pond water from one pond to another, this isn't a good idea as it can inadvertently introduce diseases or invasive species. Make sure that you have somewhere to sit near your pond to watch wildlife that appears, perhaps a secluded bench, some decking along the water's edge, or even a small jetty or bridge so you can look down into the depths easily. So which creatures might you spot in and around your pond? Frogs, toad and newts will use even small bodies of water to breed, and they've got a guide on garden amphibians that you can look at. Caddisflies, damselflies, dragonflies, mayflies, pond skaters, snails and water beetles breed in water. Large ponds will support waterfowl, including mallard ducks, moorhens and coots. I don't think any of those will be coming to my pond, but one day you can dream. Birds such as swallows and house martins will pick off insects from above the water surface and use muddy areas for nest building. Grey herons can be regular visitors to even a small pond, hunting for fish and amphibians. And actually I spoke to my neighbour who had also built a pond, and he said that he gets a grey heron visiting that picks off some of the frogs. So I'm really hoping we get that in our garden. It would be amazing. You can even get grass snakes who are excellent swimmers. They may be seen hunting in garden ponds, but I think mine probably is still a bit too small for grass snakes. But yes, super excited. Even if, we just get the beetles in the pond, that would just be incredible. So next year, spring onwards, I'll definitely be doing a lot of pond watching, and I'll keep you updated on what comes to live in our pond. So at this point in the dig, the earth is getting really compacted, so I'm actually using a 3-pronged cultivar to get up the soil, and then I'm using my hands to actually just put it in the wheelbarrow. It just felt like the most quickest, efficient way to do it. But it worked because I, at this point, finally managed to get to the depth that I needed to for the pond pot to sit lower than the level of the soil, so that I could also create a margin shelf as well. So this point is when I put in the pond liner. So I bought the Swell UK pond liner, which is 0.35 millimetres thick. It's got a 25-year guarantee against UV damage, and I got the 2 metre by 2 metre size, which was $12.99. I bought some pond gravel to cover the top of the pots of the aquatic plants, and before I fill the pond with water, I just wanted to do that job first so that I could see how much gravel was left over, because I thought then actually I could put some at the bottom of the pond and on the bottom of the margin section of the pond. So here you'll see that I'm covering the pots with the gravel, and then I actually put it in the pond, and then I fill it with the tap water. So just a little bit more from the RHS website about ponds. So it says that ponds don't have to be large. Even a mini pond in a pot will benefit wildlife. Make sure creatures can get into and out of the pond easily, and add suitable plants both in and around the pond. So before you start making a new wildlife pond, there are several factors to consider. So sloping sides, at least one side of the pond should have a long, shallow slope. This allows easy access for wildlife, and when water levels fluctuate, creates a damp habitat for smaller creatures. If you're making a container pond that isn't sunk into the ground, add a ramp on the outside and the inside. So you'll see that I add in a really cool gnarled bit of wood that is going to be a lifeline for any creatures that fall into the pond and want to get out, so they can scramble up there and onto the shallow shelf. So hopefully it'll be fairly easy for them to get out if they need to. So it also talks about size and depth. The larger the pond, the more wildlife it will attract. But size isn't everything. Even a mini pond in a pot will provide a habitat and water source for plenty of small creatures. Ideally aim for a depth of 20 to 60 centimetres, which varies across the pond, as this will suit the majority of pond fauna and flora. and the timing. It says autumn and winter are the ideal times to make a new pond, but it also says later on that in terms of planting, spring is the best time to put them in. So I'm making the actual pond at the right time, it seems, but I'm putting the plants in at not the most ideal time. But I'm just really hoping that they'll make it through the winter and they'll start to grow again in spring. You can see here I put some large pebbles at the bottom of the pond next to where the branch is coming out, in the hope that that will also help wildlife they'll nip onto from the base to the large pebbles and then onto the branch to help them get out of the pond. And then it's time to start filling it up, and you'll be able to see that Knuckles and Rufio are both very intrigued by this. It's so cute. So then you'll see that I found some sort of large branches and twigs, and a few bits of stone, and they were donated from our lovely neighbours, who just had them hanging around in their section of the garden. So these go all the way around the edge, and these provide little areas for creatures to hide in, and I will then get some more pebbles to add more hiding spots and cover up the liner a bit more. So that's the next phase. So this next phase starts 2 weeks after I initially filled the pond, and this is because alongside some cobbles and pebbles I'm putting the pond plants in, and as I mentioned earlier, the 2-week time slot has meant that the fluoride and chlorine from the tap water in the pond will have evaporated, making it a safer environment for the pond plants. But in 2 weeks, also what's happened is that tons of leaves have blown into the pond. The RHS states that you shouldn't worry if a few leaves end up in your pond, as there is little evidence this is bad for wildlife. However, if lots of autumn leaves fall into the water, rake or fish out some with a net before they sink to the bottom. I used my 3-pronged cultivator to rake out the leaves, as that's all I had to hand, but I did worry about cutting the liner of the pond, so I think I will look to invest in a net, because that just feels like it'll be a much sort of softer way to pick up the leaves, and I wouldn't ever want to damage any wildlife that's in the pond. It was okay to do it now because nothing's really in there, apart from the odd tiny insect. But yeah, so hopefully if I do get some wildlife, then if I buy a net, that'll help them out in the long run, I think. As you can see, I've put in the margin plants into their place, and I am then adding some cobbles and pebbles. So I've got stone cobbles and Scottish tweed stone pebbles. These were just from my local garden centre, and I think it was a deal for 2 for 16 or 2 for 18, something around that. I can't remember exactly, and I cannot find the receipt. But it was something like that, and that means for the pond plants, the liner, the gravel, the pebbles and the cobbles, it all in total came to just above £70. After I'd put in all the cobbles and pebbles, I then put in the 2 plants that can live in the deep water, and I also topped up the water with the water from the bucket that the deep plants have been living in, but I unfortunately didn't film any of this because my camera ran out of storage. So anyway, they are in there, the water's topped up, but I'm hoping when we actually get some proper rainfall, which we haven't had in ages, then it will just top up the pond a little bit more, so that the water will completely cover the liner. And that's it, the pond is complete. I really hope you've enjoyed the process of watching me build a pond in our garden, and I will keep you up to date with any wildlife sightings I see in the future.